You have two videos I want to highlight right now. Velocity Banking, the billion-dollar scam. You also have Velocity Banking, they are lying to you. Who are they and what are they lying about?
So they are Renatus, Sam Kwok and his brother, Michael Lush from Replace Your Mortgage University. Sam actually got on a call with me a couple weeks ago. His words to me were, Zach, I agree with you. And if you contact me again, I'm going to sue you.
I think it would be helpful if we dive into Velocity Banking. What's the pitch to get people to buy a program like this?
The pitch is banks are bad. They're robbing you because amortized debt costs more than simple interest. And so for the person that doesn't know finance, that goes, oh my gosh, I'm getting ripped off. First off, there's no such thing as amortized interest. It does not exist. The only way to pay down a $100,000 mortgage in 5 years is to pay off $100,000 in 5 years. It's not my opinion versus their opinion. It's not like, oh, I think Ford's better than Chevy. This is math.
You also are in a lawsuit with Renatus. Why don't you give a little bit of context to like why you're even suing?
I've seen the impact of what happens to this. I've seen divorces. I've seen people have to file for bankruptcy.
Okay, I was not aware of that.
This is why I use strong words such as scam, because I've shared this with people over the years and they don't want to come to the table and have a conversation around.
In the lawsuit, are you trying to get money from the legal battle that you're in?
They acknowledge it's wrong. That's all I want. They just acknowledge it's wrong and quit selling it.
It's shocking to me that this is in writing.
So I went and I hired a certified fraud investigator. And I said, hey, take a look at this. And he did a report and he concluded that...
Zach Oman, welcome to the BetterWealth Show.
Thanks for having me, Caleb.
Now, you've been stirring the pot online here. I think that's maybe an understatement. You have two videos I want to highlight right now. Velocity Banking, the billion-dollar scam. Scam is a strong word. You also have a video that says Velocity Banking, they are lying to you. Who are they and what are they lying about?
So they are Renatus, Sam Kwok and his brother, Michael Lush from Replace Your Mortgage University, Valerie, I think is her name, and pretty much everyone out there selling this idea about velocity banking and mortgage acceleration paydown. And the second question is, what are they lying about?
Yes.
Yeah, and so what they're telling you is that you can use this strategy of lines of credit to pay down loans. And the idea behind it is they're saying that lines of credit have a cheaper cost of interest. And so they're getting people to take for example, a 4% mortgage and refinance it into a 7% line of credit. And their justification behind that is, depending on who you talk to, is the interest is calculated differently. And a lot of them use this premise of this guy in Australia that wrote this book and says this is how they become debt-free over there. And so I went and I read the book, and that book is based on incorrect math as well. And it says the reason they're paying down these mortgages are because of compound interest. And if you understand compound interest, mortgages do not have compound interest. And so that whole premise that these guys are basing their assumption on is incorrect. And what they're doing is they're using these incorrect mathematics, the incorrect calculation of interest to sell mortgages, to sell high-ticket coaching, to sell stuff to people. And I've been on the backside of it. I was with Renatus for about 15 years. I was actually their number 2 salesperson. And I got to see the negative side of it, like the part that people don't want to share because they're embarrassed about it. The over leveraging, the losing of houses, the trashing of people's credits, the divorces. I know people have gotten divorced over this stuff. And so that's why I reached out to you, Caleb, because I want to bring awareness to this, because people are talking about it on the internet and they talk about all the upsides, but the reality is based on incorrect assumptions and math. And the reality is people are destroying themselves personally, financially, relationships wise. And so that's why I want to get this information out there.
Yeah, and you also are in a lawsuit with Renatus. Do you want to just give a little bit of background there? You sent me all the back and forth. This is I killed a couple trees printing this out, but I just want to get context of that before we dive in. I think it would be really helpful to hear more of your backstory. Define, like, especially since you spent so much time with Renatus, like, what is that company? What do they teach? I think it would also be important to take a step back and actually go down to, like, what is the velocity banking pitch? What things do you like about it? what things, and then go into in what you believe is a lie and what you believe is a scam. And then I also just want to say, for those of you that know, myself, this channel, I am very open for dialogue. I have these kind of conversations with my friends and colleagues, and I'm not afraid to having conversations about let's pursue truth, let's pursue areas, and so if you're any of the people being called out, you are 100% welcome on the show to have a conversation. And especially Zach, if I can be a person that can create a dialogue between you and maybe someone else that you called out, I would love to do that in good faith. So I just want to call that out to begin with. And without further ado, why don't you give a little bit of context to like why you're even suing? Because that's not cheap. That's a lot of time. And most people, it's easy to maybe call someone out online, maybe make a few videos, but it's my understanding that you're taking this to the next level.
Yeah, and so I just wanna create some context around here, is I spent more than 12 years, with Renatus, and I have friends in there, and I am, as we were saying in the green room, I am who I am partially because of the time and development I spent in there. So I bought their education, I came out of corporate America, and, I was able to quit my job, I bought real estate, I've been able to grow my businesses, and so I was actually on Bob Snyder's, board. I sat on his board, my wife and I. And back in 2018, I brought this up to them because my background is forensic accounting, my background is financial modeling, my background is, very high-end theoretical finance. And so this is a very complex conversation, the way that they share it. And back in 2018, I brought it up to, Jay Stark and Bob Snyder, who are, Bob Snyder is the founder of Renatus, Jay Stark is the head operator. And I said, "This isn't right. The assumptions that you're selling it on is based on that amortized interest costs more than simple interest, right?" And I went through this whole list. It's in that paperwork I sent you. And I said, "If you keep selling this, I'm afraid someone's going to sue you because this is factually incorrect." And I got on a call with Bob Snyder, and he agreed with me, right? He agreed with me, and he said he would fix it. Fast forward, year after year, uh, it didn't get fixed, and it didn't get fixed, and it didn't get fixed. And I finally had a point in my life where I said, being with Renatus no longer aligns with who I am, no longer aligns with what I want to do with my life. So I quit. And in that, there was sort of a heated conversation between me and Bob Snyder. And I kept telling him, I said, "Hey, you guys got to fix this velocity banking stuff." There was other stuff, but that's more of opinions. This is math. And I reached out to him with a demand letter because the last thing I want to
And what
do.
what year did you quit, and what year did you send the demand letter?
So I quit. Again, I'm just going based off of, it was like when I officially said I was done versus when I sent the email and said I was done. So I would say my mind was out of it probably about 2.5, 3 years ago. Right. And so
Okay, so I just want to be clear because I'm going to try to be as objective as possible. In
yeah,
2018, you knew that there was something wrong. And again, like I don't know if this is in writing or if it's just on a phone call. You had a conversation with Bob. He, I'm taking your word for it, but he, for just the internet, he allegedly agreed with you that says yes,
yep,
you're right. Didn't change. You stayed at the company, so that's like that. You stayed at the company even though that you knew that there was something wrong, and then you got to a place where you're just like, I can't do this anymore. 2-3 years ago, left, and that's when you sent that email. My producer just told me something wild. Only 6% of you who have subscribed to our channel have enabled notifications for our videos. That means 94% of you watching right now won't get told by YouTube when we upload a new video. So whether you're brand new or one of our longtime subscribers, if any of our 1,000+ videos have helped you think differently or brought you value in any way, I'd love for you to hit that bell and turn on all notifications. We've got some incredible guests and conversations planned for 2026, and I don't want you to miss them. Thank you so much for supporting this channel, and I'm excited to keep growing with you.
yeah. Because what happened is I was trying to work my way out of it. Right. I mean, my whole community. I built the community around selling the Renatus education, and every time I tried to step out, I would get a conversation from Bob Snyder or his attorney saying, "You can't do that." And so, I went from being on the advisory board for Renatus to just one day saying, I don't want to do this anymore. And it took me about 2.5 years to fully exit. And the reason I did that is I just didn't want to leave people, right? I didn't want to leave people. They bought me, they bought my vision. And I had a call every day. I had a community, a beautiful community, and we were really there supporting people around the real estate. And so I just didn't want to up and leave. But at the same time, there's this thing in the background. I just a couple things. One of them, this, it didn't align with me. And so over about two, I went from on the stage to the front row to the back of the room to where is Zach? And, to this day, we still have a morning call 5 days a week to support anyone that we ever sold the education to, because I'm just a big believer of honoring my word. And so what happened was emotionally, I wasn't I was in a bad place. And because every time I tried to talk about this stuff, everyone would say I'm crazy, right? All the leaders were like, Zach, you don't know what you're talking about. They were saying, all of this stuff that you get to see online. And so I didn't know how to prove it because I know finance at a level most people can't even comprehend. But the challenge is if the receiver can't hear it in the way that it needs to be heard, it's meaningless. So it was falling on deaf ears. So I finally got the courage, and I'm telling you, this takes a lot of courage because, as you said, it's time, it's money, I'm putting my butt on the line for this. Because I don't want to go out into the public, and I don't want to say this stuff, and I don't want to do what I'm doing. But at the end of the day, what's happening, in my opinion, is wrong. And so before all of this, over the last couple of years, I have sent email after email after email specifically to a handful of people. And so I sent a demand letter to Renatus, Bob Snyder, and a handful of people. There was about 20 people copied on that email. And I shared the email back and forth. I shared all my YouTube videos. I shared everything. And I asked them to stop it. And I asked them to say, hey, I'll show you. I'm not going to sell you anything. I'm not going to charge you for my time. I'm going to show you why this stuff is wrong. And the response I got from them was talk to my attorney. Their attorney sent me a letter, which you have, and they sent me a cease and desist and accused me of stealing their intellectual property. And in that, I sent a 33-page response with about 100-page support in emails. And in that response was, they made, I think, 3 or 4 claims. One that I stole intellectual property. And my response to that was, this is finance. This is math. You don't own math, right? I went through all of their educational material and the way that they promoted it. And I said, this is why it's wrong. This is the question I would ask your financial professional. And I went through this. I think there's about 33 bullet points I went through. And my request to their cease and desist was, let me talk to someone that actually knows what they're talking about because you guys don't. And so their attorneys called me and said, what do you want? And I got on a call with their attorneys and I said, I just want it to be fixed. This is wrong. And their attorneys said, they obviously are defending their client. My request was hire somebody that can hear what I'm saying at the level I'm saying it. And they denied that request. And so I went and I hired a certified fraud investigator or examiner, CFE. And I said, hey, take a look at this. Let me know what you think. And he did a report and he concluded that the statements, the way this is presented, the first one is, you can pay off debt faster. It's proprietary. You save more money in interest. And the fourth one's it's evading me right now. But these claims that they make, we broke them down individually. And that's how the people selling this idea really hook people, is because they mash them all together, right? And they lose people in the numbers because it's a lot of complex numbers. And so I just broke them down piece by piece and just proved each of them individually. And that's what the CFE looked at. And he sided with me, wrote the report up. I sent that to Renatus and I said, hey, I asked you to pay for someone to do this. You said no. So I took the liberty and did this. I sent that to them and they still said no. We don't agree with you. And so after that, it's the only next step is, in my opinion, because they're not going to listen to what I say, is a lawsuit. And so that's why I decided to take this to the next level. I also sent those emails to Sam Kwok. I also sent those emails to Michael Lush. Michael Lush never responded to me. With Michael Lush, I actually got on one of his sales calls and I went through the whole sales process to understand what they were saying. And in that sales process, I told the guy he was wrong. Like the whole idea of this mathematical calculations, I said you're wrong, and he wanted to argue with me and call me names, but would not deal with the math of it. I had somebody else from Replace Your University reach out to me and wanted to have a conversation about my video I created, and I said I'd love to have a conversation with you. And then he scheduled a call with me and he didn't show up. And when I reached out to him, he said he wasn't allowed to talk to me. Right. And so Sam Kwok reached out to him, sent him all these. This is over years, like over the last year and a half. Because again, I don't want to I want to give these people an opportunity to see what's wrong. And Sam actually got on a call with me a couple weeks ago, and he was I think rightfully so, probably a little defensive and probably a little scared, but his words to me were, Zach, I agree with you, and if you contact me again, I'm going to sue you for I forget the technical term, but it was essentially because I was costing him money. And my response to him was, sue me, because then we can actually talk about it in an area where we have to present facts other than your opinion. I got on a call with Denzel Rodriguez. Out of everyone I've talked to, he's been the most open. He was very open to the conversation, but at the end of the day, I don't think he understands the math of what he's saying. So we just sort of parted ways, and I told him exactly what I was going to do, and that was that. And so that has brought us to the lawsuit, because at the end of the day, someone has to hold these people accountable. Because if you do the math, I know what these people are selling these programs for, $5, $10, $20,000 a pop, and I know how much they're selling. I mean, this has a huge impact on these people that are trying to change their lives financially. This has a huge impact on actually the cost of interest, and then the actual the video I create, the $1 billion, I think it was called the $1 billion scam. They don't tell you the opportunity cost, right? In the world of investing, in the world of real estate, leverage, which is debt, is the primary reason we get all of these huge returns. The only reason you can buy real estate with no money, no credit is because you're using somebody else's money, typically debt. And so on one side of their conversation, they're saying, leverage yourself to the moon, buy real estate with no money, no credit. And on the other side, they're saying, it's costing you more. And so there's this contradiction, and it confuses people, and they don't know where to go. And they're just spending money and spinning their wheels. And again, I just want to get this out in the open
Yep.
and have a conversation about it.
Yep. And just to be clear, there's contradictions in so many spaces. Obviously, this is personal to you because you spent so many years doing it, and we're going to dive in. But I'll just even speak for the life insurance space. I've not been in part of any lawsuits. I've had conversations with friends that are going to be sharing the stage that I host in June, who I disagree with. And so I just want to say that I'm a fan of talking, and I do believe it's revealing if people don't want to talk. That's all I'll say, and I would love nothing more to host a dialogue and conversation. So I appreciate you breaking that down. I should have asked this at the start, but Renatus, who are they? What do they sell? I've heard that there's like a network marketing style to it, but do they just sell velocity banking, or is that just part of the things that they sell? If you could break that down for me, that would be helpful.
Yeah, so the whole idea behind Renatus was there was a company before this called Nouveau Riche, and they sold real estate investing education, wealth building education. And this was headed up by Jim Piccolo and Bob Snyder. And I think there was another individual. And so what happened was Nouveau Riche went, I'm going to use the word under, they couldn't keep going financially. And so what happened was Bob Snyder made an agreement with Jim Piccolo to buy out the intellectualness of it. And he rebranded it as Renatus. And so the idea behind Renatus was we're going to bring all of these individuals together that are experts in their field, from wholesaling, fix and flip, rentals, money lending, anything in that world. We're going to bring them all together and we're going to create a platform, record these videos, and we're going to sell the education, right? And so it's I bought it. That's how I got introduced to this. And so the idea is we're going to keep finding professionals such as infinite banking, such as whatever strategy could help us, and we're going to go find the top person in that field, and we're going to bring him to our studio. We're going to record a class and add it to the curriculum. And so that's what they're selling, education. Now,
Okay.
how they sell it is through a direct sales model. And so what they do is you can sign up and you can sell the education and then you get a commission, and there's different tiers to that, but that's the distribution model.
And then there's other models out there, people that you've named who are, either selling bigger packages or selling the velocity banking package. And usually, I won't say always, but usually it's tied to this statement that you made about amortized interest costs you more than simple interest. And usually, and this is what I've seen. I've had many videos on my channel about velocity banking. I think if people are curious where I stand, they can go watch those. But usually it's what I would call a half truth, because they're not wrong with what they're showing, but over 30 years we're not factoring in other things. And I'll just give a quick example, not even using velocity banking as an example. A common thing will be, and Dave Ramsey and other people have alluded to this or even said this, where you'll look at a 30-year mortgage and you'll say, Zach, if you over 30 years you're paying for your house maybe more than again, it's like if your house is 500,000, there's over $500,000 of interest. And so if you pay off your house in 15 years or 10 years or 5 years, you're saving all that money. You could be saving $300,000 of interest. That's powerful. All I have to pay you is 10 grand and I'm going to save 300,000. Like that's like, you're my best friend. And so that's usually, again, I've seen, and this is where it's like pay extra towards your principal. I'm not even talking about velocity banking. I'm just talking about like
Right.
the motivation to pay off your house fast. And yet we're not factoring in the opportunity cost and the other side of over 30 years modestly investing. And
Right.
and it's actually, this is where I have so much respect for Dave Ramsey. Do I disagree with his points? Yes. Do I love how consistent he is? And do I love for him to say like this is more of principle for me? And yeah, it's like even the snowball method. There's mathematically better ways to pay less interest, but momentum can be underrated. And sometimes when you hire a coach, that can be underrated, because now you're getting someone to help you create. So there's no doubt that whether it's infinite banking, velocity banking, other programs, you can always find somebody who's had a better life because they took a step, and that step increased intentionality. A lot of times it just includes saving more money, which is always going to be good. So sometimes if people just like commit to something, whether it's right or wrong, they're saving more. And you can always pick those success stories. I'm sure you could even see at Renatus, there's probably people that you've known who their entire life has been changed because they took the step. But your whole deal is, that's great. You can find those examples in all kinds of pockets, but don't lie. It shouldn't be, you still should be able to serve someone and help them build momentum without straight up lying. Is that, I don't want to take words out of your mouth, but is that essentially where you're at when it comes to this whole thing?
Yeah, and it's like you were asking me in the green room. It's like, am I anti first lien? Am I anti credit? I'm not anti anything. These are all tools, and for me, I don't. There's a time to use everything. The question is, are you the right person? And is now the right time? And is this the right situation? And so, anyone out there selling a one stop solution, is they're doing exactly that. They're selling you something. Because to really understand, now this is my opinion, to really serve someone at the level that I think they should be served, is you have to understand who they are as a person. You have to understand their skill sets. You have to understand their resources, their understanding of money. Because for some people, it might make absolute sense to pay down their mortgage because it aligns with who they are and what they want. For other people, it may make no sense to pay down their mortgage because the opportunity cost and all of these other facets that we have to consider. And so this is not like a black and white answer. what does the math say? And then does that strategy align with where you're going and who you are as an individual?
Cool. Okay. Zach, I think it would be helpful if we dive into the velocity banking. What is the pitch? What, in your experience, what's the pitch to get people to buy a program like this? And then, like, what are they saying? And then I would like to get into why you believe it's a lie and why you believe it's a scam. I'm pretty anti-word scam because it's a really strong word, but depending on how you define you probably wouldn't be suing someone if you didn't
Well,
back that up. So that's a strong word. And so I don't know how we want to dive in, but I do think it would be like, let's seek first to understand, like, here's what's being said, and then let's break down the why that's wrong.
I love it. Yeah, and I trust me when I chose the word scam, I defined it in that video, and so I agree it's a very strong word, but I'm willing to say that because I reached out to them multiple times. They don't want to deal with it, and so here's the pitch. The pitch is banks are bad. They're robbing you because you're paying all of this extra in interest. Amortized debt costs more than simple interest. They're saying we can pay off your mortgage in, let's say, 5 to 7 years. That's the typical pitch. Banks are bad. You're paying amortized interest. Mortgages are front loaded. That's another one. And that's sort of the context of it. And so the one graph that they almost always show to prove this is a breakdown of payments, right? And they'll say mortgages are front end loaded, right? Mortgages are front end loaded in interest. And then what they use to prove that is the payment schedule. And so if the payment's $1,200 a month, they're going to show that you're paying $1,100 in interest that first month. And so for the person that doesn't know finance, that goes, oh my gosh, I'm getting ripped off. The bank is ripping me off. But they're misinterpreting that graph because you cannot have front end. First off, there's no such thing as amortized interest. It does not exist. There's interest that is amortized over time. And that complicated payment formula, if you guys have ever seen that out there, it's payment equals, all of these math symbols. All of that is solving for is what is the payment that would pay this amount off under these parameters of time and interest rate. It just backs into it. And so if you take that, if you have a line of credit for 100 grand at 6%, and you have a loan at $100,000 at 6%, and you make the same payment, let's just say $1,200, they're going to pay off in the same amount of time. The mechanics are exactly the same as long as you don't move money in and out. And so they use that graph of showing all of the interest in your payment, and they conclude that it's front end loaded, but it's not, because it's just a percentage of the outstanding principal. And as the outstanding principal goes down, right, the interest becomes less, but the payment stays the same. And so that's one of the biggest things that they're using to sell this to people. The other thing is they're saying, oh, we can pay it off in 5 to 7 years. And so I have a graph we can look at later. The only way to pay down a $100,000 mortgage in 5 years is to pay off $100,000 in 5 years. You're not getting a discount for paying off. You have to pay down the principal. And so the reason this works to pay less in interest is because they pay more in principal. It's that simple. There's no other way. There's only two ways to pay less interest: pay more principal or pay a lower interest rate. That's it. And they're using all of these complex words and all of these complex schedules and all of these complex calculations to justify selling you something such as a mortgage, a line of credit, or a program.
My book, second edition, by the way, sold almost 20,000 copies. The reason you might ask, why is it a second edition? I had one thing I had to review. I changed a couple things. I gave credit to people who's really helped me, and I changed a few other things. But the main thing I needed to change was when I first wrote this book, I talked about the efficiency of a 30-year mortgage. Okay, so I'm a big fan of the 30-year mortgage. And I talk about earning interest versus paying interest. And I just flat out had the right intentions. I showed a $250,000 balance over 30 years, what that would compound to, and then what that would amortize to. And I wasn't trying to scam anyone. I wasn't trying to be misleading, but I said the thing, would you, Zach, pay $178,000 to earn $578,000, and it's at the same interest rate? And obviously, anyone that's like asked that question, okay, would I pay 180 to earn 580? The answer is yes. The problem is that was misleading. The reason that was misleading is at the same interest rate, it's the identical. Compounding is just it's just showing a balance growing over time, and amortized interest is literally just the same interest rate on a smaller balance. And when you factor in opportunity cost of what you would have done in that side account earning 4%, which is very attainable, it's a wash. So I'm still pro 30-year mortgage for all the reasons I wrote about in that chapter, but I had to change that wording. And I felt so convicted that I literally went into second edition and I changed that wording and said, at the same interest, it's a wash. Now, I gave so many reasons, and I would stand by these reasons, to why the 30-year is still a way better product than paying for cash from a control standpoint, the opportunity cost, potentially earning more over time, all that I still stand by. But I just want you to know, like, even me getting into this, I wrote about that because that concept of the amortized versus compound is like such a powerful thing, and yet I was called out for it. They were correct, and I changed it because they're right. And even though like I had great intentions, the version 1 that was wrong of me to write. And so I'm pointing that out to say, like, this is something I'm aware. This happens in the infinite banking space all the time. People talk about amortized interest, and it drives me nuts now because I'm on the other side. I'm like, no, usually it's around selling something. And the irony about life insurance, it's usually the interest of earning versus paying is usually not on your side. There's 10, 15 other reasons why you would want life insurance and why it would still make sense. But if you're just looking at what you're earning in your policy versus what you're paying, I have news for you. It's not going to be in your best interest. And yet a lot of times the way to quote unquote sell it is to talk about amortized versus compounding. And as a result, it can be very, very problematic, and that happens even in our space. So, am I on the right track on, like, that's like the main selling point? And the other thing when it comes to velocity banking, this is at least what I've noticed from afar, is on one hand they're comparing, like, over if you pay off your house in 7 years, they're showing that, and then they're still comparing it to the 30 years of interest, and it's like, wait a second, like, on one hand, you're showing 7 years, but you're still using the 30-year interest example. That I feel like that is, I'll give people the benefit of the doubt, but I feel like that anyone that's like somewhat intelligent is going to be like, wait a second, like, that doesn't add up. Why are you comparing a 7-year versus a 30-year and making it feel like it's apples to apples?
Right. So and so the two big things is amortized interest, right? That's sort of the justification of why this works. And the other one is exactly that, is they're comparing a 30-year mortgage at a steady payment to a second scenario where they paid in the full principal amount, and they're saying, look at all this money we save you. The correct analysis, or let me rephrase that, a better analysis, right? Because would be, okay, you have to pay down the same amount of money towards the mortgage as the velocity banking or whatever, accelerated banking, whatever they call it, and then compare it. And as long as the mortgage will almost always win, almost always, unless there's a lower rate on the line of credit. But if you put the same amount of money in there, you have to compare that. And then the challenge to that is liquidity. They'll say, but you don't have the liquidity. My response to that is the same line of credit that you're telling people to use to chunk, have that as your backup.
Oh, I like that. So that's a perfect example where the line of credit is not bad. It's at because that was gonna be like I was gonna play. This is why I'm a good third person when it
Yeah, I
comes
love
to
it.
debates. Is my devil's advocate to why the first lien HELOC versus like if someone were to come to me and say my goal is to pay off my house fast. Part of me would be like, okay, part of me would hurt inside, but if that helps you sleep better at night, okay, great.
Right.
And if they ask me, I only have two paths. I could pay off a 30-year and put extra money towards my principal, or do a first lien. If those were the only two options, I would do the first lien. Even though I would disclose, I would say you're gonna pay more in interest, but I like the flexibility. But what you're saying is like you could just have both. And it's like you could have it wouldn't be first lien, it'd be a second lien HELOC that you could do the chunking strategy. And because the problem with paying extra towards a 30-year is you're knocking down that principal, but that money is not necessarily available to you, which control and liquidity is a really, really big deal, at least for me and a lot of the people that we talk to. Did I get that right? Like someone could still use a HELOC and aggressively pay it down, or how would that work?
We've helped people unlock millions of dollars in hidden value just by reviewing their old life insurance policies. Unfortunately, thousands of people do not have life insurance policies set up properly, which could be costing them a lot of money. If you have a policy, the few minutes it takes to fill out our form could be the difference between continuing to waste money or unlocking serious value. If you qualify, we'll review your policy 100% for free and give you the honest breakdown you deserve. Click the link in the description or take comment below to apply. Back to the video.
Yeah. So again, from a pure mathematics standpoint, right? Because you're obviously an experienced business person, an experienced investor. So what you can do with money is dramatically different than someone that doesn't have a skill set to go buy houses, buy investments, buy stuff like that, right? The opportunity cost. And so, but from a pure mathematics standpoint, is let's call it a 4% mortgage and a 6% line of credit. The fastest way to pay that down would be to pay it towards the mortgage with zero chunking. You do not want, they sell this idea of chunking, taking 4% debt and putting it towards 6% debt. It costs more money. But the justification behind it is, well, it's a different type of interest. You're taking amortized interest from the mortgage and you're converting it to simple interest to the line of credit. And then the other thing they say is, well, it's average daily balance, right? Average daily balance is the reason this works. And it works because you're paying more towards principal. And then you're
Right.
comparing it to that 30-year example with no money paid towards principal.
Yeah, Zach, I'm just gonna push back here slightly here. Okay, so if someone were to come to you and say, Zach, I want to pay off my house as fast as possible, mathematically, don't do a first lien. Stick with the 30. If the 30 years lower interest, and by all means, getting a 30 years most likely going to always be lower interest than a first lien HELOC, and you're at least locking it in for 30 years versus it potentially going up and down. So correct me if I'm wrong there, but you would say mathematically put extra money towards the 15 or 30 year versus doing first lien. And then my advising side of me goes, man, that personally would be problematic for me if people are putting $1,000 extra per month because boom, now an emergency happens. Now they have to swipe a credit card, or their access to liquidity is less advantageous. Yes, they could go to the bank to get a HELOC then, but banks don't love lending money or opening up HELOCs when you've lost a job or when you need that money. And so what would you say is if someone, like, what would you say to that? Because again, like that's me holding space to say first lien. I would choose a first lien in that scenario, but I wouldn't gaslight you by saying this is the faster. I would just, personally, I would feel like it's a safer way to pay off than putting money towards a 30 or 15-year mortgage.
Right. So again, everything depends, but the reality is you cannot get money out of a property unless you have equity in it. Right. And so let's say, again, it depends on balance of principal and all of this stuff versus ARV. There's all of these situations, but the simple answer is keep the first position mortgage at a lower rate and get a second position line of credit, HELOC, credit card, whatever it is, because they teach this strategy with credit cards, and they have people that are chunking 4, 5, 6% loans to 20% lines of credit, 15% lines of credit. It's like, so what I'm saying is get the line of credit, but don't use it. That's the security blanket, right? And logically, it's no different than paying money in, getting money out, right? Because let's say you have a $50,000 second position home equity line of credit, but you're paying all of your money towards the first position, which is cheaper, right? Because it's a lower interest rate. And then time progresses, and you go to the bank and you say, "Hey, I've paid down another 100 grand, 50 grand. Give me more credit. I'm not going to use it."
I understand. Yeah, that's a great way. The way no one asked me, but I'm going to say it anyways. The way that I would say is just open up a high yield savings account and save the difference. And then if you really, really want to pay off at a certain time, and when your savings account's more than your balance, knock it out. You still have a ton of liquidity. And then I would over that time hopefully help them understand that a 30-year mortgage might not be like the worst thing in the world for that. Yeah,
that's the first thing you have to understand. Is paying your mortgage off the best interest, or best? I don't want to say interest.
Best solution.
Best solution, right? Because for many people, it's not. And so this just assumes.
But I will say this. Out of fairness, because I do, again, I would consider Sam, I would consider Michael friends, and I will say this, that they would probably even agree with that. But in the world of marketing, you got to get someone in. And sometimes sometimes you got to meet people where they're at. And sometimes it's like, hey, I'm really motivated to pay off the debt. And then when I learn more, and I'm like, okay, I'm now going to use this to buy other assets. But the buying assets wasn't going to get me to like change my mentality. So I'm not trying to give them, like, I'm not trying to like put words in their mouth. I'm just saying, like, I understand that sometimes messages resonate with people at different stages. And so, anything you want to say before? I believe you're going to show us some like real clear deal of like very basically like how the math is misleading, but anything you want to say before you share your screen?
I just want to piggyback on that, right? And so, as business owners, we're selling to the people that want our solution. And in this case, there's people that want to pay off their mortgage. They just hate debt. And it's like, well, if that's, sort of agree with your last statement there. And so I think what I want to share with people is it depends. There's no one, silver bullet to this. It's understanding where you're at, where you want to go, and what is the best way for you to get there with your skill sets, with your time, with your money, all of these things. And so that's why I want to encourage debate about this, right? Because it may make sense for someone. It may not make sense for someone. Life insurance may make sense for someone. It may not make sense for someone. But but I think what's important is that we have to create trust in the marketplace. And I think there's a distrust in the marketplace, specifically around high ticket coaching programs, right? And things like that, because people make big promises and they don't deliver. They sell them to someone. This is the big thing I learned. Sell it to someone who's not ready for it. Like, the information could be great, but they're just not ready to swim in that deep of the pool. And but this is all stuff that I've learned over 20 years,
It's tricky, because if you're really, really motivated to be debt free, that, again, I'm speaking broadly here, but normally you're not maybe the most sophisticated, and so these messages tend to attract people who might not be running the numbers, might not be asking ChatGPT or some AI like, here, let's look at the different ways. And then again, sometimes they need to do something, whether it's call Dave Ramsey's team or hire somebody, because because actually spending is the issue. It's actually not a HELOC problem. It's not a 30-year mortgage problem. It's like you're spending all the money. So you need to do something, but that's another conversation. Let's dive into your math of mortgage acceleration. And Zach, I want this to be as deep of you. We have as much time as you want. I want you to spend as much time laying out your position. And then my hope is that there's more conversations and that we hear other sides. And I actually, my optimism is like, I do believe there's room for the first lien HELOC. There's room for all of this. And that's my hope, is that we can agree and then potentially agree to disagree. But my problem is you can't agree to disagree on like 1 + 1 = 2. So like there's got to be like, okay, yeah, this is the truth. And then you might have a different opinion. Like I'll use my example when it comes to life insurance. I am really, really bullish on life insurance because of some of the other aspects that don't all fit into an IRR calculator. And I try my best to articulate that. So I'm not trying to like gaslight someone, but I still, like, there will be someone that looks at my same exact presentation and they will buy term and invest the difference. That doesn't make me right or them wrong or vice versa. It's like, hey, what are the things that we can agree on? And then there's 100 different ways to go about it. And that's why there's different channels. That's why there's different advisors. So all that to say, let's dive into your screen.
Yeah. And so, I spent years trying to understand how to articulate why it's wrong. Right? And I have very complicated financial projection models. That's what I was trained in. But the problem is I can understand it, but if the person I'm talking to doesn't understand it, it doesn't work. Right. And so I thought of a way. I was meditating on this actually, because I was actually speaking to the attorneys from Renatus. And I said, when they asked me, what do I want? I said, I want you to hire someone that understands what I'm saying. And they said, well, I don't understand math. That's what they said. Or finance at that level. And I was like, okay, well, these are high functioning people. Right. And I think I sort of get lost in how well I understand finance. And I forget that, everyone hasn't spent 20 years in spreadsheets like I have. And so I was asking myself, well, how can I explain this in a way that is unrefutable yet simple? Right. And so what you're seeing right now is a process, and it's a logic model. Right. And so if we can understand logic, we can extrapolate that into the more complex stuff. And so, again, this is just a simple analogy here. And so the math of interest, right, is you take your principal times your rate times your time. Right. That's the simplicity of interest. Obviously, there's a lot more complex. And so we have to ask ourselves, right, because one of the big thing that they're saying is we're going to save you more. We're going to save you in interest by paying off your mortgage faster. And so there's only two ways to pay less in interest mathematically, is you pay an actual lower interest rate or you pay more in principal. Okay, so because you can't, time is a function of the other two, right? And so you could take a 30-year mortgage and you can pay it off in 5 years. Well, or let's take this next example here. $100,000 mortgage that would typically be a 30-year mortgage. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to say, well, hey, I'm going to show you how to pay it off in 3 years. And I take them through all this complicated, chunking and all these complicated terminologies and all this complicated stuff. And I'm going to show you that, I paid it off in 3 years. The reality is this: the only way to pay off a $100,000 mortgage in 3 years is to pay $100,000 towards the principal. There's no other way, mathematically, right? And so we look at that and we go, okay, well, let's, this is the analysis. And you were alluding to this earlier. And so this one over here to the right, this is the Renatus calculator. And I took it. So I just punched in the numbers. So, so what we're looking at here is the Renatus Velocity Banking Calculator. And you're supposed to put in your inputs and then the outputs. And so the illusion is that you're saving $101,882 $882.06 in interest.
Yeah. Can we walk through this? I really want to understand this. So there's an original balance of 100,000.
So you got a $100,000 balance. You have a 6% interest rate, a 30-year term, and then the payment, right?
Okay.
And so this is that's just the typical mortgage. And then they have the idea of chunking, right? And so they're saying, this is, I spent so many years with these guys. This was always the analogy they used, a 20% or 21% line of credit. And so what this is saying is enter your line of credit details. And so this one right here is $20,000 at 21%. So you have a 20.
It's like a credit card line of credit.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Because the whole premise is amortized interest costs more. So a 21%.
So Zach, I don't want to jump ahead, but they're literally will say in writing that you should take out a line of credit for 21% to pay off a 6% debt.
It's in their classes.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I was not aware of that. That's very interesting. Okay, let's continue.
Yeah, I mean, you could go and watch people online. They say this.
No, I believe you. It's shocking to me that this is in writing.
Yeah. And so I don't know if they've taken down the courses since but when I posted all those videos on YouTube, I went and I watched them to make sure, because I was making a bold claim, right?
Number one, the math is just going to be wrong, but you're actually like putting someone in a way worse situation if you actually do this. But let's continue. I don't want to sidetrack too much.
Right. And so the other one I forgot to mention is they say it increases cash flow. And it doesn't, because in this situation, you're adding the line of credit as an additional payment.
Yes.
So that is mathematically incorrect. Again, that was the fourth one I was talking about earlier.
Okay.
And so then what you do here is you add your income, right? So this is, you make $6,750, and then you have $3,400 in living expenses minus your mortgage.
Got it.
Right. And the idea here is to chunk use the $20,000 line of credit to chunk against the original balance of the mortgage. Follow?
Chunking as like you put the 20,000 and you just pay off. So now the principal is at 80.
Right. So let's say we do it full capacity, which wouldn't typically, right? But let's just, for this analogy, $20,000 of your original loan balance gets converted to the line of credit. So now you still have $100,000 worth of debt, but it's broken up between 80 at 6% on a 30-year term and 20 at 21%, $20,000 at 21% line of credit.
Got it. I understand. I'm tracking.
Yeah. And so then the idea is to take all of your excess cash flow and pay down that line of credit.
Yep.
That's the theory behind this. And if you do that,
and then once it hits the 20, then you're continuing to accelerate the.
Take another chunk until it's paid off. That's the theory behind it. And then on the right side is the output. And so if we do this, we're going to pay it off in 3 years. Right? We're going to, now this is where the one cell if you change this one cell, it would show the correct analysis, in my opinion. And that's the traditional interest, because they're comparing this to the 30 years. And so it's what they're doing is they're paying all of this extra money towards the principal of these debts, be it line of credit, loan, and then they're comparing it to a 30-year if you paid it on schedule. And then they're saying, we saved you $101,000, $882,006.
Yeah. Zach, you're obviously, you know the answer to this, but if you just took out the line of credit and you still saved all that money and you just put into a high yield savings account and then you paid off you would actually save more interest doing it that way than the new line of credit.
I say it's a balance sheet question, right? Are we looking to grow your balance sheet? Because wealth, this is my definition, wealth is created on the balance sheet. And so right now this is an asset, but there's also a liability. So we have to ask, and that's the $1 billion scam video I created. I said, here's the opportunity cost of actually paying down your mortgage. And it's going to depend on your earning capacity of money. The other thing we also have to factor in is risk, right? Because there is a risk of in investing in the market and all of that. And so it's not just a silver bullet. But again, if you have capacity to earn higher than what you're borrowing on a risk-adjusted basis, it does not make sense to do this. That's a very complicated statement, right? But I think as a finance guy, you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah. Does this also analysis when they say it's all the money that is, are they assuming that you paid off the 21% line of credit, or is that just not factored into this analogy?
No, so it's if you look at the details of this, what they're doing is they chunk $20,000 off of the or a portion of that, right, off of the original balance, and then they pay the mortgage, and then they pay the line of credit. They pay
Okay,
it
so they are
down.
including the line of credit getting paid off in this scenario.
Correct, right? Because it's
Okay,
constant. Okay, we got our line of credit. Take your second chunk. Pay down the line of credit. Take your third chunk. But this
I
is
see.
all based on the incorrect assumption that 6% costs more than 21%.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I'm tracking. Let's move on. I don't want to camp too much on this, but yeah, that's really, I really appreciate you walking through that, because now I understand, at least in this scenario, and I'm not saying that they're doing this now, but I'm understanding the pitch. And even myself, I could look at this, and if I wasn't crazy analytical, I was like, oh wow, I pay off my debt in 3 years, and I save $101,000 of interest. Like, that sounds really, really great, and I can see why people would flock to this.
Yeah, and then it's like, yeah, I'll show you how to do it by my program, right?
Yeah, and even when you include the program costs, what would be a typical program cost that Renatus would sell to show you how to do this strategy?
So they have different courses. Remember, they have all of these different classes, and then so they sell them a la carte, and then they sell them in bundles. And you can buy the a la carte. I haven't looked at the prices. It's around $1,000 ish. But what they promote is going all in, right? Buy the $20,000+, be all in, learn everything.
Okay.
And so that's sort of the angle
But
they use.
technically, you could learn this part and get coaching for $1,000.
I don't know if the coaching comes. Let's call it $1,500 for the velocity
Okay.
banking course, and then the advanced velocity banking course is another $1,500 ish.
Okay. Okay. All right. We can definitely move on. But yeah, I hear that. So then, what's the other side of this?
So this is how they use to promote this, right? And so the theory is, hey, you're only going to pay $13,956 in interest. I said, well, let's look at this in a little bit different angle. And so if we use everything we learned up above, the only way down to pay down a $100,000 mortgage in 3 years is to pay down $100,000 in 3 years. That's it. So I just went to, again, I want to keep it simple because I think I lose people in the complexities of my spreadsheets. And so I said, let's just go to calculator.net where everyone has access to, and let's put in these terms: $100,000 mortgage at 6% on a 3-year term. It's the same duration. It's apples to apples now. What's the total interest? And so here it's $9,518.
Yep.
They're saying their strategy costs you $13,956 plus their course. Mathematically, it's cheaper to pay down the mortgage. And then, the liquidity factor and all that other stuff, we already talked about that.
Right.
And so how do you know if there's quicker? All you have to do is whenever someone's selling you this idea, this is how you can call BS on them, is whenever someone's selling you on this idea, take these inputs, balance, rate, and the new adjusted term of 3 years, and just go plug it into calculator.net.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's you just showed me what logic I would assume by I wouldn't have gotten the exact dollar amount, but it would been like, if you essentially you could pay off your mortgage in 3 years and save interest just by putting it all towards the 30 year if you wanted to do that. And then we could allude that it would be, well, okay, at what interest rate is that at? Is that a 6% interest rate?
Same thing. So I just kept it. I kept it the
6%.
same.
So let's say a high yield savings account's at earning 3%. You would, if you put your money into a savings account instead of the mortgage and then just paid it off, the interest would be a little bit higher, and it would take, slightly longer, but I would feel better at. So I'm just saying this. We could actually run the math maybe on a part 2 video. I don't want to put you on the spot, but let's just say the total interest would be $10,000, and you might pay it off in 3 years and 2 months kind of deal, but you would pay it, you would still save interest on the other side, and you would, in my opinion, you would have a lot more control than the other way. But regardless, you just pointed out very simply that if the interest rate is the pitch, you'd be better off on the 30-year. And then if the liquidity and control is important, I think you'd still be better off on the 30-year, just saving the difference instead of putting that all towards your mortgage. Because over 3 years, the interest is really not going to make or like, it's only a total of less than 10,000. So it's not like we're dealing with like crazy interest.
Right. And so what we have to consider, because I'd have to like run the math, what we have to consider is we're putting the same up. We're in both of these examples, if we zoom out, we're assuming that $100,000 is getting paid towards debt over 3 years. I'm saying on the left, if you just pay it directly towards the mortgage, it costs you $9,518. They're saying if you do chunking, you can pay it off in 3 years, but it costs you $13,956 plus their course.
Yep. It's pretty black and white to me.
Right. And this is why I can come out and say what I say, because it's not my opinion versus their opinion. It's not like, oh, I think Ford's better than Chevy. That's an opinion. This is math. And this is why I use strong words such as scam, because I've shared this with people over the years and they don't want to come to the table and have a conversation around it.
Yeah. Zach, do you have other things that you want to share? Or do you feel like this does a good job kind of putting this conversation in the container that it needs to be?
Yeah, I think anything else overcomplicates it. And I think that's what most people do, is they try to overcomplicate this. If we can agree on this up here, right, the simple logic model, it proves everything I need to do for this. I mean, because I want to try to keep it as simple for a 12th grader to understand it, right?
Yeah.
I think anything else just gets into the weeds.
Yeah, it does. It does hurt a little bit to think that people would be refinancing lower interest rates to put their money in a higher interest rate product and pay for that. It does. Yeah. So I'm with you. So what's the next step? Like, what is your hope for those? I'm trying to do my best to play devil's advocate here for those that are saying, hey, Zach said he quit, but he actually got fired. He's disgruntled. He's just trying to sour this thing. He's, what's the like in the lawsuit? Are you trying to get money? Like what is your end? Like what will a win be? Because suing is a lot of time. It's a lot of energy. It's a lot of money. Are you looking for them to pay you? Are you looking for them to pay your legal expenses if they find you? Like, realistically, what do you think this is? How do you actually think this is going to play out from the legal battle that you're in?
So here's, and I want to share this because this is important. So I grew up as a farm kid in Indiana, small town, 3,500 people, and we worked hard for everything we had. And money was always a challenge. And I remember my parents arguing about money. They sort of separated. I blue collar kids. Most of my friends went off into the workforce. And I remember my one buddy came to me and he says, "Can you help me with this?" And I go, "What is it?" And it was I was going through college. I was in finance. Because I said I wanted to master money because I never want to have to worry about money and I want to do right by people. And it was his retirement account from like the steel mills. And I said, "Somebody gets paid to answer your questions on this." And he goes, "Yeah, they don't have time for me." Right? They don't have time for me. And I'm just like, I'm here to bring correct information to people. That's why I started this 20 years ago. That's why I went to school for finance. That's why I said, I'm going to master money. So first off, I can understand it, because every time I talk to someone, they're trying to sell me something, right? They're trying to sell me on their service, on their product, on their thing. And if I buy their thing, I'll have financial freedom. And I have bought a lot of things and I have learned a lot over the last 20 years. And the thing I've learned is most people don't understand what they're selling. right? And they're selling it for the commission. That's my opinion. Because there might be something else out there better for them, but that takes time and that takes a vast and deep breadth of understanding all of them. And so, I'm also a realist. Like you said, people are selling what they sell and that's their business. And so the reason I'm doing this is I want correct information to be out there, right? I want correct information to be out there because I have bought so much stuff that did not deliver on the promise. And I have had panic attacks. I have had, emotionally where I was just like, is this ever going to work? And I have spent so much money on developing myself, and I've done over 10,000 consultations with people, and I see the impact of when somebody buys a program and they don't get the desired result or the promised result. What they do is they destroy themselves emotionally. I'm not good enough. They quit. They belittle themselves. It's this negative self-talk. And I've seen the impact of what happens to this. I've seen divorces. I've seen people have to file for bankruptcy. I mean, I've been through it myself. I've been through my own little challenges. And so the reason I'm taking such a stance on this is because I want correct information to be out there. Not only for me, but for the world that wants to try to change their life, that only has $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 left to their name, right? And don't have the willpower and gumption that I had to keep going, right? There's some people that just give up after this stuff.
Yeah.
And I want to empower people with the correct information. And if that means I got to put my neck on the line, well, guess what? I'm going to do it.
And so what are you hoping for this lawsuit? Are you asking for money? Are you asking for what is an ideal outcome if you were to quote unquote win? What does winning look like for you?
They acknowledge it's wrong. That's all I want. They just acknowledge it's
That's
wrong
all you want.
and quit selling it.
They acknowledge it's wrong and they pay for your legal fees, or what? They acknowledge it's wrong, just period.
I don't care. Don't pay. Is there a monetary amount in the lawsuit? Yes. Right. It was for they took my education away. Right. So I paid 20 plus 25, I bought pretty much every education they had, and they took it away from me because they say I violated their terms of service or something like that. And so, it's like, pay for that, pay for this, pay for that. At the end of the day, if I don't get any of that and they just admit they're wrong, I'd walk away.
Okay. Well, Zach, I appreciate you coming on the show. I'm really hoping that this is one of many conversations that we can have collectively. And once you finish the velocity banking quest that you're on, maybe we'll bring you into the infinite banking space and we can do our own quest there. There's a lot of people that we could analyze in a lot of different sectors. I'm just biased because I'm in that space, but I wish you the best, and appreciate you coming on. I also will just say we'll include your channel, anything you want us to link down below, and then with your permission, obviously anything below we'll link. Anything that Zach allows us to when it comes to receipts, when it comes to lawsuits and all. If that can't be shared, totally respect that. If that can, you'll see a bunch of links down below, because obviously more light, more exposure. I mean, we've seen this recently in the news. People like transparency, and that's
right. I'll show everything I can legally. I'll give everything I can, and if that includes the lawsuit, absolutely, because I think light solves the problem. Like, just shine some light on it. See what I say in my lawsuit. See what the CFE says in his stuff.
The best way is prove you wrong. And so if Zach, you're out of line, I hope someone will prove you wrong, and I hope it's on my channel. It's all good.
I would love to get on. Like, if I'm wrong, I'll admit maybe I did overstep something. Maybe I did overlook something.
I love it.
Totally.
Zach, anything else you want to say before we land the plane here?
So here's what I would say is, there's people out there promoting this, and I would say, and I'm going to go on a limb here. I'm not saying they're bad, and I want to be very clear about that. I think their heart is in the right spot. I know some of these people personally.
Oh yeah, I can only my interactions with both Michael Lush and the Kwok brothers have been 10 out of 10. They are stand-up people. They have treated me and myself wonderfully. and I've interacted with them from a business side, and also just from a content. I don't actually don't know if we've done any content together, but we've talked about it, and so I want to say that, but I also that doesn't that it I have a YouTube channel. I talk about things, and if it just was based on the people that I liked or disliked, I would have a different channel. So it has nothing to do with that, and that's one of the reasons I think you approached me, is because of the way that we do content, our relationships, but the way that we lay things out. I told you pretty clearly I don't want this to be. I have no interest in defaming anything. I want to talk as objectively as possible. And I think out of anyone out there, I think we have the best chance of getting a response from at least one of them, hopefully all of them. And I would love to hear their side. And my question to you would be, based on what you shared, if this was corrected, if they were like, we want to do the quote unquote right thing, and I'm saying the right thing is based on just disclosing, do you think they could sell their programs, or do you think their whole businesses would have to change? And this is, again, your opinion. This is not
That's a great question.
factor, but I'm just curious to say, like, if Renatus, the Kwok brothers, if Michael Lush, like, if they acknowledged, do you think they could still sell their programs? And what would you do if you were like consulting them and say, like, hey, listen, like, this actually do it Zach's way, and this will actually be how you make more money? Or do you think that's impossible? Like, do you think by acknowledging this, their businesses would have to shut?
That's a great question. And so the whole premise of all of this, and I just sort of want to finish my thought before I answer that one, is there's this book out of Australia that talks about this, and I forget the name of it, but it's
Is this guy still alive?
I don't know.
Okay, if he is, if the Australian author's still alive, like, come on, that would be
come on the show.
that would be
Come on,
awesome.
like, I read
Come
your
on the
book and
show.
you're wrong. You're mathematically wrong. But so here's the challenge. These guys, Denzel Rodriguez, Sam Kwok, like, they're just taking information that they were told, and they assumed it was correct. And so that's not bad on their behalf, right? And so they're just, when I first saw this, I was like, oh, these guys are experts. We assume that the information we're selling is correct. And so that's why I want to be very mindful. I don't think they're bad people. I think they bought a program, they read a book, they through the world of information, and they said, yeah, I really believe this. And at some point we have to believe stuff, right? We can't just go be an expert at everything. And so I understand how they got here, right? And I totally get that. But at the same time, when someone comes up to you and says you're wrong, and then brings receipts to why you're wrong, and then you keep doing it and you don't even want to have a conversation, well, that's the part I have a challenge with. And so if I was, quote unquote, advising them, there is a time and a place for lines of credit. There's a time and a place for mortgages. There is a time and a place for buying life insurance. There's a time and a place for everything, for the right person heading to the right to their destination. And so, do I think they could still promote this, sell this? Yes, but I think it would be a totally different audience, and I think it would not be as sexy. Because if we sort of go back to this, my screen share here, showing someone that they can save $101,000 if they buy a $1,500 program, mathematically that's a no-brainer close, but it's based on incorrect analysis. And so the sexiness of the value of what they're selling versus the benefit of what they're buying isn't going to be that dramatic. And so I think their businesses would be materially impacted.
Yeah, I'm the optimist. I'll take the other side. I think if you want to sell, I have nothing against. I mean, Dave Ramsey's built a massive empire in helping people pay off debt. Like, do I disagree with him? Yes. Does everyone know who Dave Ramsey is? And very few people know whom I am. So that tells you everything you need to know about momentum. And so I would just say, like, build your whole program on objectively helping people become debt free as fast as possible, or the best way, and then but that would look like it's not a one size fits all. It's like, look at the situation, and then, maybe it's they keep their 30-year mortgage and they save the difference in a high yield savings account, or maybe there's certain aspects, and obviously, like Dave Ramsey would say, hey, I could save you interest by going to a 15-year mortgage versus a 30, and we could have a whole episode on why I would disagree with that. But there's the aspect of maybe that message is debt free, and maybe instead of saying like this is the way to do it, everyone's in a different situation. If someone comes to you with a 15% 30-year mortgage, oh, guess what? I'm a big fan of a 9% first lien HELOC. You know what I'm saying? Like it's one of those, I don't have to get like, it all depends on the inputs, but we have to be objective when it comes to that. So that's what I would say is I actually think these businesses, the message itself, because I don't actually believe most people are buying these programs because they love HELOCs. I think they're buying the program because they want to be debt free and they want somebody to help them with that. And if my take is if someone really wants to be debt free, I don't think you're wrong by showing it them. We could have a intellectual conversation around like, are you actually helping them in the long run versus not? Sure. But I go back to what I said earlier. It's like, if someone wants to be debt free, show them the best way to do that and own it. And I also want to say that Dave Ramsey, some of the things that he teaches, like the snowball method, mathematically isn't the best, but momentum and emotionally, and he acknowledges that, and he's only grown in his popularity. So I think it is pretty small thinking to say that the whole business crumbles by acknowledging the things that we talked about. That's just, again, maybe I'm an optimist at that, but it's like, I'll take life insurance, for example. We don't sell any of those talking points, and yet we do quite well, and we're only going to grow with that message. And so that's maybe my take. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments, and I'm excited to hear kind of like what's going to happen from this episode being released. But I am excited to hear the comments, and that's the comment section is like the greatest mirror on like, are we missing something? Right. What are the points that you really like? What are the things that we should acknowledge? And then obviously in the description, we're going to link a lot of stuff. So for those internet sleuths out there, get your reading glasses on if you really want to dive into this.
Yeah, and I'm open to come on and talk to anybody about this. Every time I ask someone to debate, I asked the instructor of Renatus, Randall Cloud. He was tearing me up on one of my YouTube videos. I said, well, great, let's have a conversation about it. And he says, I don't want to.
Yeah. Well,
so it's
maybe they'll come on. Maybe they'll come on with me. So
get them on. I love it.
That's the info. All right, Zach. Thank you.
If you're an advisor, life insurance agent, or someone who just loves the life insurance space, we have a must-attend event for you. It's our 5th annual Life Insurance Summit, June 15th through the 17th, right here in Nashville, Tennessee. Not only are we going to have the biggest names in the life insurance space, but this is also an incredible opportunity for you to meet and connect with like-minded individuals and be a part of our ever-growing community. Learn more and get your tickets before they sell out in the link in the description or pinned comment. Can't wait to see you there.